The morning sun streams into Margaret's kitchen, illuminating the quiet order of her life. It's a ritual she's performed for the last 15 years, a silent communion with her future self. Lined up on the polished countertop, next to the half-finished crossword puzzle, are 7 small bottles, a rainbow of daily maintenance. Her hands, steady and capable, move with practiced efficiency. There's the small fish oil capsule, gleaming like amber. The vitamin D, a tiny pearl of sunshine. And then, there it is. The calcium. It's different from the others. Large, chalky, and unapologetically dense. It feels substantial in her palm, a piece of bedrock she can hold. To Margaret, this pill isn't just a supplement, it's an insurance policy. It's the daily premium she pays to ensure she can still climb the stairs to her bedroom without fear, to lift her grandchildren into a hug, to live in this house on her own terms for as long as possible. She remembers her own mother in her final years, stooped and fragile, a life shrinking with every passing season. This pill is her rebellion against that future. It's her doctor's clearest instruction, the one tangible thing she can do every single day to build a fortress around her independence. She fills a glass with water from the tap, the cool glass of familiar comfort. She pops the pill into her mouth, its dry, mineral taste a brief inconvenience, and follows it with a long swallow of water. There. It is finished. A wave of quiet satisfaction washes over her. She is being responsible, proactive. She is doing everything right. But then, just as she sets the glass down, she feels it. A brief, familiar flutter in her chest. It's not a pain, not even a discomfort, just a murmur. A strange little rhythm that lasts only a second before disappearing. She's felt it before, a few times a week now. She dismisses it with the same practiced efficiency as her pill routine. Indigestion, probably. Or perhaps she just needs to slow down, not rush her morning. It's easy to explain away, a minor glitch in an otherwise well-maintained system. She turns her attention back to the crossword, looking for a 7-letter word for reassurance. But what Margaret doesn't know, what millions of people just like her don't know, is that this simple act of responsibility might be a profound betrayal. That chalky white pill, her trusted shield against the ravages of time, might not be reinforcing the fortress at all. Instead, it might be silently, methodically laying the foundation for a different kind of fragility. What if the very thing she believes is protecting her bones is, in fact, hardening the vital arteries around her heart? This disconnect, the gap between a lifetime of well-meaning advice and the unsettling evidence that is now coming to light, is a story that unfolds in kitchens like this all over the world. It's a story of good intentions and a fundamental misunderstanding of how the body truly works as we age. And understanding this story, this paradox, is the first step toward reclaiming genuine control over our health. I'm Dr. Dean, and that quiet conflict in Margaret's kitchen, that feeling of doing everything right while sensing that something is still fundamentally wrong, is the precise reason this channel exists. For over 2 decades as a physician, I've sat across from thousands of people just like Margaret, people who followed the rules with diligence and trust, only to find themselves navigating health problems that the rules were supposed to prevent. Here at Keystone Health, our entire mission is built around challenging that disconnect. We look at every piece of common medical advice through a specific filter we call the longevity lens. This lens changes the conversation entirely. The conventional system is designed to ask, how can we improve this number on a chart? How do we make the bone density score go up? It's a simple, measurable target. But the longevity lens asks a much more powerful, more human question. Does this advice actually contribute to a longer, better life? A life defined by independence, vitality, and the quality of experience that makes the years worth living. It prioritizes the whole person over an isolated data point, because we all know a perfect test result is meaningless if you don't feel well enough to enjoy your life. Our purpose is to empower you to bring that perspective into the room with your doctor. We're here to arm you with the evidence to question the kind of health wisdom that has been passed down for so long it's become medical inertia, a system running on autopilot. This isn't about being confrontational. It's about becoming a confident, collaborative partner in your own health journey. It's about having the clarity to ask, is this decades-old advice still the best advice for me today? And there is no piece of advice more on autopilot, more universally prescribed, and more desperately in need of this critical re-examination than the one centered on that large, chalky pill. The story we've all been told for a generation is simple, reassuring, and it makes perfect sense on the surface. But it is also, as the evidence now clearly shows, profoundly and dangerously incomplete. So let me state the core of this problem as directly as I can. The #1 supplement, universally recommended to seniors for bone health, may be one of the most significant unacknowledged contributors to heart disease in the modern world. Now, I want you to understand, this isn't about a minor side effect you might find in the small print of a bottle. This is not about an upset stomach or a mild inconvenience. This is about a fundamental misunderstanding of how calcium actually works inside an aging body. It's a story about a well-intentioned medical recommendation that has led millions of people like Margaret, people like you, down a path they believed was leading to strength and security, but which for many ends in a place of unforeseen cardiovascular risk. The entire premise rests on a dangerous assumption that the calcium we swallow in a large, concentrated pill will automatically find its way to our bones. But what if it doesn't? What if that pill Margaret just took, that daily insurance policy she relies on, isn't going to her skeleton at all? What if, instead, it's being absorbed into her bloodstream and, lacking proper direction, simply gets deposited in the most convenient places it can find? Places like the flexible walls of her arteries, the delicate valves of her heart, and her soft tissues. What if her daily ritual of building her bone fortress is, in reality, slowly paving her arteries with a layer of concrete? This is the uncomfortable truth that is now emerging from over a decade of high-quality scientific research. It's a truth that has been slow to filter down into the daily advice given in clinics and pharmacies. And it represents a catastrophic failure to apply that longevity lens we just talked about. The system became so hyper-focused on improving a single number, a bone density score, that it lost sight of the much more important outcome, the overall health and vitality of the person. It solved for one problem without acknowledging that it may have been creating a far more serious one in the process. This raises a cascade of urgent questions. How could a recommendation this common be this flawed? What powerful evidence are they not discussing with you in the exam room? And most critically, what is the safer, more effective strategy for ensuring your bones remain strong without compromising the health of your heart? In the next few minutes, we're going to unravel this paradox completely. My goal is not to leave you with fear, but to replace that fear with clarity. To do that, we're going to walk through this story in a structured way, so you can see exactly how this well-meaning advice went so wrong. First, we will dismantle the original flawed common sense logic that made these supplements seem like such a good idea in the first place. We'll explore why simply adding more of a raw material isn't enough to build a strong structure. Second, we'll look at the powerful decade-long evidence, the studies published in major medical journals that your doctor may not have discussed with you, that clearly shows the cardiovascular risks. And third, we will reveal the critical missing ingredient in this whole equation. This is the piece of the puzzle that ensures calcium gets to the right place, your bones, and stays out of the wrong place, your arteries. By the end of this video, my promise to you is that you won't just be informed, you will be prepared. You will have a clear, evidence-based framework to have a confident and productive conversation with your doctor, shifting the focus from a single test score to your overall quality of life. As we go through this, there are two specific points I want you to watch for. First, we will reveal the forgotten vitamin that acts as a traffic cop for calcium in your body. This nutrient is the missing instruction manual that tells calcium exactly where to go. And here's the critical part. It is almost certainly not in your daily multivitamin, and it's a piece of information that has stopped many people I've worked with in their tracks. And later, I'm going to share the shocking and frankly tragic irony of how this bone-safe supplement can directly contribute to the very fall and fracture it's meant to prevent. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy hidden in plain sight, a dangerous loop that the conventional medical narrative completely ignores. But before we dive into the science behind that, I have a quick question for everyone watching today. It's a question that will help us all see just how widespread this advice has become, and I think the answer will be incredibly revealing. Has a doctor, a pharmacist, or any other health authority ever specifically told you to take a calcium supplement to protect your bones? Please, let me know with a simple yes or no down in the comments. You don't need to share any personal details, of course. I'm asking because I want us to see together just how universal this one piece of advice has become. I suspect the comments section will become a powerful visual testament to how deeply this recommendation is embedded in our healthcare system. I will be reading through all of your responses because understanding our shared experience is the first step toward changing the conversation for the better. And the reason this is so important, the reason I'm asking you to do this, is because the sheer volume of yes answers I expect we'll see points directly to a huge, baffling contradiction. It highlights a massive gap between everyday medical practice and the last decade of scientific evidence. It's the observation that we have a population with high calcium intake, yet skyrocketing rates of both osteoporosis and heart disease. How can that possibly be? This entire problem, this disconnect, boils down to a single powerful concept we'll call the calcium paradox. The paradox is this: a population that is diligently supplementing with calcium to strengthen their bones is at the same time experiencing hardening of the arteries from an excess of calcium. It seems impossible. You can't have too much and too little of the same thing at the same time. But the paradox is solved the moment you realize one crucial truth. Your body needs more than just the raw material. If you want to build a strong brick wall, you can't just dump a truckload of bricks onto the job site. You need a bricklayer, a skilled worker who knows exactly where each brick is supposed to go. Without that guidance, those bricks are not just useless, they become a hazard, cluttering up the pathways and getting in the way. And to properly understand how to manage the construction site of our own bodies, we first need to zoom out and redefine what we're actually trying to build. We need to look at the entire blueprint through that longevity lens. So the first principle of looking at this through the longevity lens is a concept I call outliving the problem. Let's think about this logically. Why does someone like Margaret take a calcium supplement? The goal is to prevent a potential hip fracture, an event that might occur when she's 85 or 90. It's an investment in a distant but feared future. And on the surface, that makes perfect sense. But this is where the conventional thinking falls apart. The strategy to prevent a problem at age 85 cannot increase the risk of a catastrophic event at age 75. The primary goal must always be to arrive at that older age with health and vitality intact. You have to outlive the problem you're trying to prevent. When we apply this lens, the entire risk-benefit equation changes dramatically. Let's look at the trade-off we're being asked to make. On one side, we have a supplement that studies show offers a very modest, and some would say statistically insignificant, reduction in fracture risk for most healthy adults. On the other side of the ledger, we have a growing body of evidence showing that same supplement significantly increases the risk of a heart attack, the leading cause of death worldwide. This is, quite simply, a bad trade. It's like wearing a helmet so thick you can't see the oncoming traffic. You've solved for one risk by amplifying a much larger and more immediate one. The health of your cardiovascular system is the absolute foundation for a long, active life. Any strategy that compromises that foundation, no matter how good its intentions, is fundamentally flawed. It prioritizes the future integrity of a single bone over the current integrity of the entire system that keeps you alive. This bad trade becomes even more pronounced when we consider that the body itself changes as we age. The way a 70-year-old body handles a massive, sudden dose of a mineral is profoundly different from how a 40-year-old body does. This brings us to the second crucial principle of the longevity lens: reduced resilience. An aging body simply has less margin for error. Think of it this way. A 40-year-old's body is like a brand new electrical grid, able to handle a sudden power surge with ease. But a 70-year-old's body is more like a mature, established grid. It's still incredibly effective, but its circuit breakers are more sensitive. A sudden massive surge can overload the system. That huge, chalky pill isn't a gentle trickle of power like calcium from food. It's a lightning strike. It floods the system all at once with 1,000 milligrams of a single mineral, what medicine calls a bolus dose. For a younger person, the body can buffer that shock, process the excess, and move on. But for someone like Margaret or Arnold, that same dose can overwhelm their more sensitive systems. The body, unable to direct this sudden flood of calcium into bone tissue fast enough, has to put it somewhere. So it gets deposited in the most convenient places: the flexible lining of arteries, the delicate valves of the heart, the soft tissues of joints, or it forms stones in the kidneys. This isn't a minor side effect. It's the system failing under a load it was never designed to handle at this stage of life. And crucially, this process of misplaced calcium doesn't just stop there. It isn't a single, isolated problem. It is the first domino to fall in a much more dangerous chain reaction, a process that can pull someone deeper and deeper into a web of medical interventions. We call this the cascade effect. This brings us to the third principle, and it's perhaps the most important for understanding the long-term consequences. It's a process so common and so insidious that we must give it a name to truly see it for what it is: the calcium cascade. This is the quintessential slippery slope of modern medicine, a chain reaction that begins with a single well-intentioned decision. It starts with the pill. That daily high-dose calcium supplement taken for years begins to deposit in the arterial walls. Over time, this misplaced calcium causes the arteries to lose their youthful flexibility. They become stiff, like old pipes, instead of supple hoses. What happens when arteries stiffen? Blood pressure rises. So, at her next annual checkup, Margaret's blood pressure reading is consistently elevated. It's a new diagnosis: hypertension. The standard by-the-book response is a prescription for blood pressure medication. But that medication is not without its own consequences. Perhaps it causes dizziness, a terrifying prospect for someone worried about falls. Or maybe it causes a persistent dry cough or a feeling of profound fatigue. These aren't just minor inconveniences, they impact her quality of life. And so often another pill is prescribed to manage the side effects of the first. Do you see the pattern? One pill leads to a diagnosis, which leads to a second pill, which leads to a side effect, which leads to a third. This is the invisible current pulling people like Arnold and Margaret deeper and deeper into the medical system. They unwittingly become professional patients, their days and their well-being increasingly organized around managing the consequences of that very first intervention. The calcium cascade transforms a proactive health choice into a lifelong dependency on an ever-expanding list of medications. It's a journey that moves someone from a state of health to a state of being medically managed, all because no one in the system connects the final outcome back to that first chalky pill. And this entire cascade, this whole chain of unintended consequences, begins with a single piece of advice. An idea that sounds so perfectly logical, so simple and true, that for decades almost no one has thought to question it. So let's examine the foundational idea that drives this entire medical recommendation. It's the beautifully simple, common sense logic we've all been told. It goes like this: your bones are made of calcium. As you age, your bones lose that calcium and become weaker. Therefore, the solution is to add more calcium. On the surface, it sounds perfectly logical. It's a direct, intuitive answer to a frightening problem. But this is where the first critical mistake is made. It's a well-meaning but dangerously incomplete view of a complex biological system. Imagine noticing a brick wall is crumbling and thinking the solution is to just dump a truckload of new bricks on the ground next to it. You have the raw material, yes, but without mortar to bind them and a bricklayer to put them in their proper place, those bricks aren't just useless, they become an obstacle. A hazard. That is precisely what happens with these high-dose supplements. They are the truckload of bricks delivered without the crucial cofactors and biological signals, the mortar and the bricklayer. This fundamental error in thinking is the very first domino to fall. And to understand how this plays out in a real life, we need to return to Margaret's story. For 15 years, ever since her first routine bone scan showed the early signs of osteopenia, she had followed her doctor's advice to the letter. Every single morning, without fail, she took 1,200 milligrams of calcium, split into 2 large pills, one with breakfast and one with dinner. She saw it as an act of defiance against frailty, a daily deposit into the bank of her future independence. She never missed a day. Recently, though, something had changed. The steep hill on her daily walk, the one she used to conquer with ease, now left her feeling winded. Not just a little out of breath, but a deep, pressing need to stop and catch her breath, a feeling that was entirely new to her. She chalked it up to getting older, a simple, unavoidable consequence of her 70-plus years. Then, a few months ago, she developed a persistent cough. Her doctor, being thorough, ordered a chest scan to rule out anything serious. The cough turned out to be nothing, a lingering remnant of a winter cold. But the scan revealed something else entirely, something hidden and silent. It was a single line in the radiologist's report, written in cold, clinical language. Significant coronary artery calcification noted. When her doctor discussed the results, he was reassuring about the cough, but he grew serious when he mentioned the finding in her arteries. He talked about starting a statin, about monitoring her cholesterol more closely, and about the importance of a heart-healthy diet. He was focused, professional, and entirely forward-looking. But he never once looked back. He never asked about her supplements. He never made the connection between the 15 years of high-dose calcium she had been diligently taking on his advice and the concrete-like deposits that were now lining the arteries of her heart. The two facts existed in separate, unconnected silos. For Margaret, it was terrifying. She sat in her car in the clinic parking lot for a long time after the appointment, the radiologist's words echoing in her mind. Significant calcification. It sounded so final. She had done everything she was supposed to do. She ate well, she walked every day, she took her supplements. She had built her entire health strategy around protecting her bones, only to discover that she had been silently, unknowingly, compromising the very engine of her life. The flutter in her chest she had dismissed as indigestion now felt ominous. The breathlessness on the hill was no longer just a sign of aging, it was a warning siren. She felt a profound sense of betrayal, not by her doctor, whom she trusted, but by the advice itself. How could the one thing she believed was her shield become the weapon? How could the path to a stronger skeleton lead to a hardened heart? Her fear and confusion are completely understandable. But what Margaret doesn't know, what her doctor may not have fully appreciated, is that her story isn't just a tragic, isolated anecdote. Her experience is a case study that perfectly mirrors the exact warnings that have been published in the world's most prestigious medical journals for over a decade. This isn't just a theory anymore. The evidence is clear, and it's time we all looked at it. In 2010, a landmark meta-analysis published in the prestigious British Medical Journal, one of the oldest and most respected medical publications in the world, combined the data from 11 different trials involving over 12,000 people. The conclusion was unambiguous and, frankly, stunning. They found that taking calcium supplements was associated with about a 30% increased risk of heart attack. The very pill meant to prevent one problem was actively contributing to another far more fatal one. And if you think that's just a single study, consider the official guidelines. In the United States, the Preventative Services Task Force, or USPSTF, the independent panel of experts that sets the gold standard for evidence-based recommendations, has stated very clearly that there is insufficient evidence to recommend these supplements for the primary prevention of fractures in most healthy adults. This isn't just an American viewpoint. It's part of a growing global scientific consensus. Similar cautious positions have been taken by guideline-making bodies in the United Kingdom and Canada, reflecting a profound shift in understanding. The very foundation of this decades-old advice has been officially and scientifically invalidated. So we have the lived experience of people like Margaret, and we have the official word from the most authoritative bodies in medicine. Both are telling us the same thing. The advice is broken. But a percentage, even a shocking one like 30%, can still feel abstract. It's just a number on a page. To truly understand the terrible trade-off we're being asked to make, we need to bring that number to life. We need to quantify what that risk actually means in the real world. The researchers behind that landmark British Medical Journal study did the math for us. And what they uncovered is the very definition of a bad trade. They calculated that to cause one additional heart attack, you would only need to treat 278 people like Margaret with a high-dose calcium supplement for 5 years. I want you to visualize that. Imagine a community hall filled with 278 seniors, all diligently taking their daily calcium pill, believing they are strengthening their future. According to this data, after 5 years, one person in that room will suffer a heart attack caused by that supplement, an event they otherwise would have avoided. A life-altering or life-ending event triggered by the very pill they were told was a pillar of healthy aging. Now, let's flip the coin and look at the other side of the ledger. The supposed benefit? How many people did you need to treat to prevent just one single fracture? Was it 10? 50? No. The same data showed the number was 611. Let that sink in for a moment. You have to expose more than 600 people to the documented cardiovascular risk just to prevent a single fracture in one of them. The risk of causing serious harm is more than twice as likely as the potential for helping someone. The math is brutal and it is unambiguous. When you look at this through the longevity lens, it is a gamble with the worst possible odds, where the stakes are the health of your heart and the quality of your life. And this isn't a small, isolated gamble. We're talking about millions upon millions of people across the US, the UK, and beyond who have been following this advice for decades. When you multiply that risk across an entire population, the scale of the potential unintended harm becomes staggering. It's a silent public health crisis hidden behind a veneer of common sense advice. But here is the single most important part of this entire story, the piece of information that offers us a way out of this paradox. The evidence points squarely at the risk coming from the supplement itself, the large, concentrated bolus dose. It does not point to the mineral we consume naturally in our food. And this distinction is everything because it points us directly to a much safer, more effective solution that works with your body's design, not against it. So what is the alternative? The answer is both incredibly simple and profoundly powerful. It's about shifting our focus away from the pharmacy shelf and back to the pantry. Your body is exquisitely designed to handle nutrients from whole foods. When you get calcium from sources like yogurt, cheese, leafy greens like kale, or even sardines, it's delivered in a completely different way. It's absorbed slowly, in smaller, more manageable amounts throughout the day. Crucially, it comes naturally packaged with a whole symphony of other nutrients, magnesium, phosphorus, and other trace minerals that all work together to help your body use it correctly. Food-based calcium is a gentle nudge to your system. It's a slow, steady stream that your body's bricklayers can easily manage. A high-dose supplement, by contrast, is a biological shock. It's a sudden, overwhelming flood that sends the system into overdrive, forcing it to dump the excess anywhere it can. This single distinction is the key to escaping the calcium paradox. It's about working with your body's innate wisdom, not against it. But I know what many of you are thinking right now. Dr. Dean, my supplement is the advanced formula. It already has vitamin D in it. Isn't that supposed to solve this problem? It's the logical next question. And the answer reveals the next layer of this medical misunderstanding, because vitamin D plays the role of a doorman, not a GPS, and that distinction is absolutely critical. And I want to be perfectly clear on this point, because nuance is critical here. Vitamin D is absolutely essential for your health. It plays a vital role in your immune system, your mood, and yes, your bones. This is not an argument against vitamin D. The problem is not the vitamin itself, but our misunderstanding of its very specific job description when it comes to calcium. Think of vitamin D as a highly efficient doorman for your body. Its main job in this process is to stand at the entrance of your gut and ensure that the calcium you consume gets absorbed into your bloodstream. It opens the door wide and ushers it in. And it does that job incredibly well. When you take calcium along with vitamin D, you're maximizing the amount of that mineral that makes it into your circulation. But that is where its job ends. This is the double-edged sword that so much of the standard medical advice misses. Vitamin D is the doorman, but it is not the dispatcher. It is an entry pass, not a GPS. Once that flood of calcium from a high-dose supplement rushes past the doorman and into the vast circulatory system of your body, vitamin D has no more say in where it goes. It doesn't guide it to your skeleton. It doesn't tell it to avoid your arteries or the valves of your heart. It simply ensures maximum absorption, creating a sudden, massive surge of undirected calcium in your blood. In effect, the very ingredient added to make the supplement seem smarter and safer can actually amplify the underlying problem. It makes sure that the entire truckload of bricks gets dumped onto the job site, but it provides no blueprint, no mortar, and no bricklayer. This creates a huge logistical nightmare inside your body. Think of your body as a massive, sprawling warehouse, your own personal distribution center. And that high-dose calcium supplement? It's a sudden, unscheduled delivery of 1,000 identical packages arriving all at once. Now, vitamin D, the doorman we just discussed, is the delivery driver. He's incredibly efficient, and his only job is to get those packages off the truck and onto the loading dock, your bloodstream. He does his job perfectly, unloads the entire shipment in record time, and drives away. But what happens next? One might try to picture the setting. A mountain of packages sits on the loading dock with no instructions. There's no one with a clipboard, no one to scan the barcodes, no one to direct the forklifts. Without a system, without a manager, chaos is the only possible outcome. The packages start to pile up. They spill off the dock and into the main hallways, blocking the paths for other critical deliveries. They get shoved into closets and offices where they don't belong, creating hazards. This is precisely what happens inside your body. The calcium packages get dumped into your arteries, your kidneys, and your joints because there is no one there to tell them where to go. The great tragedy is that the upgraded advice to add vitamin D is like telling the driver to unload the truck even faster. It ensures more packages get onto the already chaotic loading dock, amplifying the underlying logistical nightmare. It doesn't solve the core problem. What's missing is the most important person in the entire operation, the warehouse manager. This is the person with the master plan, the one who scans each package and says, this one goes to the bone matrix in aisle 12, shelf B. And just as critically, issues the command, keep all packages out of the main arterial thoroughfare. That must be kept clear at all times. For decades, the standard medical advice has been hyper-focused on hiring a better delivery driver, while the warehouse manager's office has been left completely empty. This isn't just a theoretical problem of misplaced packages. It has devastating, real-world consequences for people who believe they are doing everything right. I saw this exact scenario play out with a man I'll call Richard, who looks a lot like Arnold. Richard was the model patient. He was proactive, he read health articles, and he always followed his doctor's advice. When the new advanced calcium supplements with added vitamin D came out, he was one of the first to switch, feeling he was making the smartest possible choice for his bone health. At his annual physicals, his doctor would proudly review his blood work. "Richard, your vitamin D levels are fantastic." "Optimal," he'd say with a satisfied nod. "Keep doing what you're doing." And Richard did. He felt reassured, confident that he had the best delivery driver on the job, ensuring all that calcium was getting into his system. He was, by all conventional measures, a picture of perfect compliance. But then things started to go wrong. It began with a deep, grinding pain in his shoulder. It became so severe he could barely lift his arm to put on a coat. An ultrasound revealed the cause: calcific tendinitis. Tiny, sharp deposits of calcium had formed in his rotator cuff tendon, causing agonizing inflammation. He was told it was just a part of aging. A few years later, he was doubled over with excruciating back pain and rushed to the emergency room, where he was diagnosed with kidney stones, another manifestation of excess, unmanaged calcium. He sat in my office with a look of profound betrayal on his face. He had followed the upgraded advice. He had the perfect vitamin D levels to prove it. He had done everything right. And yet, the packages were still piling up in all the wrong places, causing real, tangible harm and diminishing his quality of life. The advice he had trusted to protect him had led directly to this pain. And the reason was devastatingly simple. In all those years, in all those checkups where his optimal vitamin D levels were celebrated, not a single person had ever mentioned the warehouse manager. No one had ever told him that the most important part of the entire system was missing. Richard's story isn't about a failure of the delivery driver, it's about the catastrophic absence of a dispatcher. It's a story about a medical system so focused on two pieces of the puzzle, calcium and vitamin D, that it has completely ignored the third, and arguably most critical element. Is this starting to paint a different and perhaps more complete picture for you? Richard's story gets to the very heart of this frustration, doesn't it? That feeling of diligently following the rules, only to discover the rulebook was missing a critical chapter. It's a feeling of betrayal, not by a person, but by a system. And that brings me to a direct question for you. In all the conversations you've had about bone health with doctors, pharmacists, or anyone else, have they ever, even once, mentioned a key nutrient other than calcium and vitamin D? Please take a moment and let me know with a simple yes or no in the comments below. I'm not just asking to fill the comments section. I'm asking because I want us all to see the pattern. I suspect the answers will overwhelmingly be no, and seeing that together proves that this isn't an individual oversight, it's a systemic blind spot. Because there is a missing chapter. There's a warehouse manager, and for decades, this nutrient has been almost completely ignored by mainstream medicine. So now it is time to answer the question I posed at the very beginning of our journey today. It's time to reveal the identity of this forgotten traffic cop, the true GPS for calcium in your body. The answer, the missing chapter from the rulebook, is a vitamin called K2. Now, this is not the same as vitamin K1, the one we get from leafy green vegetables that's known for blood clotting. Vitamin K2 is different. It's found in specific fermented foods and some animal products, and its primary job is to act as the GPS for calcium in your body.
It performs two critical, elegant functions.
First, it activates a protein called osteocalcin. Think of osteocalcin as the mortar for your bones. When K2 switches it on, osteocalcin becomes sticky and binds calcium directly into your bone matrix, strengthening the entire structure. Without K2, the osteocalcin remains inactive, and the calcium bricks just sit there, useless. Second, and perhaps even more importantly through the longevity lens, vitamin K2 activates another protein called matrix GLA protein, or MGP. This is the security guard for your arteries. When activated, MGP patrols your entire vascular system, actively preventing calcium from being deposited in the soft, flexible tissues of your blood vessels. It's an incredibly intelligent system. K2 literally tells calcium, go here, to the bones, and just as forcefully says, stay out of here, the arteries. Without sufficient K2, the calcium from that high-dose supplement is flying blind. Now, this might sound like a neat biological theory, but this isn't just happening in a petri dish. The evidence of its power in the real world, from one of the largest and longest-running studies ever conducted, is nothing short of breathtaking. This isn't a minor player. I want to tell you about the landmark Rotterdam study, a massive, decade-long investigation that followed nearly 5,000 older adults. This wasn't a small, short-term trial. This was a deep look into how people live and what they eat over a significant portion of their lives. The researchers meticulously tracked their dietary intake of vitamin K2 and then simply observed what happened to their cardiovascular health over the next 10 years. What they found should have been front-page news. It should have changed the face of cardiology and geriatric medicine overnight.
The results were staggering.
The group of people with the highest intake of vitamin K2 had a 57% lower risk of dying from heart disease compared to those with the lowest intake. I want you to hear that again. A 57% reduction in the risk of death from the #1 killer on the planet, based on a single nutrient. But it gets even more specific and directly relevant to our story. They also had a 52% lower risk of developing severe aortic calcification. That's the dangerous, concrete-like hardening of the main artery leaving the heart, the very process that terrified Margaret. Let that sink in for a moment. A greater than 50% reduction in both death and arterial hardening. In the world of medicine, we get excited about multi-billion-dollar drugs that can reduce risk by 15 or 20%, often with a long list of side effects. This simple nutrient demonstrated a protective effect more powerful than almost any pharmaceutical on the market. It's a seismic finding that has been sitting in the medical literature largely ignored by day-to-day clinical practice for nearly 2 decades. This one piece of evidence completely shatters the old, simplistic model. It proves that the problem was never the calcium itself, but the profound lack of a system to manage it. Taking a high-dose calcium supplement without sufficient K2 is like methodically, day after day, paving your arteries with a microscopic layer of concrete. This slow, silent stiffening is a primary driver of the high blood pressure that becomes so common as we age. And once those arteries become stiff, brittle, and narrow, it sets the stage for the next predictable step in the medical cascade, a step that often leads from the pharmacy to the testing lab and directly into the hands of a surgeon. This is how that well-intentioned pill can lead directly to the operating table. The process starts silently. That microscopic layer of calcium builds up day after day, year after year, transforming flexible, youthful arteries into stiff, brittle tubes. As the pressure rises and the arteries narrow, the heart has to work harder to pump blood through them. Eventually, this can lead to symptoms. For Margaret, it was that breathlessness on her daily walk. For someone like Arnold, it might be a dull ache or pressure in the chest, especially during exertion. When these symptoms are reported, a predictable and well-worn medical pathway is activated. A stress test is ordered. Because the arteries are narrowed, the test might show an abnormality, suggesting a part of the heart isn't getting enough blood flow. This finding, while alarming, triggers the next step in the cascade, a cardiac catheterization. This is a major procedure. A thin tube is threaded from an artery in the wrist or groin all the way up into the heart. Dye is injected and a series of x-rays are taken to look for blockages. And often they find one. They see a narrowing, a stable, calcified plaque, the very fingerprint of long-term, unguided calcium supplementation. At this moment, the patient is at their most vulnerable. They are on a table, watching their own heart on a screen, being told there is a blockage. The logical, immediate, and seemingly heroic solution is presented. We can fix this right now with a stent. A tiny metal mesh tube is inserted to prop open the artery, restoring blood flow. It feels like a problem has been solved, a life has been saved. But here is the counterintuitive truth, a truth backed by some of the largest and most expensive clinical trials ever conducted. For patients with stable coronary artery disease, the kind of chronic, calcified blockages we're discussing, major studies like the Courage and Ischemia trials have shown unequivocally that placing a stent does not prevent future heart attacks or extend life any more than optimal medical therapy alone. Let me be perfectly clear. For an active heart attack, a stent is a life-saving miracle. But for a stable blockage, it is often a procedure that primarily relieves symptoms without changing the long-term outcome. And it comes with its own set of immediate risks: bleeding, infection, damage to the artery, even causing a stroke or a heart attack during the procedure itself. This is the end point of the calcium cascade. A person like Margaret, who started taking a pill to prevent a hypothetical bone fracture decades in the future, can end up with a piece of metal in her heart, undergoing a major invasive procedure that may not even improve her long-term survival, all because no one ever told her about the warehouse manager. The entire terrifying journey, from the supplement bottle to the catheterization lab, is built on a fundamental misunderstanding of how to use this one mineral. This naturally leads to a crucial question. If the concentrated high-dose supplement is the source of this cascade, does that mean all calcium is dangerous? Should we be avoiding it altogether? Absolutely not. And the distinction between the pill and the plate is the single most important lesson in escaping this paradox for good. Your body needs calcium. It is essential for nerve function, muscle contraction, and yes, for maintaining the structure of your bones. The villain in this story has never been the mineral itself. The problem is, and has always been, the delivery system. Your body is exquisitely designed to handle calcium when it arrives as nature intended, from food. When someone like Margaret eats yogurt, or Arnold has a salad with leafy greens, the calcium is delivered slowly, in a manageable dose. More importantly, it arrives as part of a team. It comes naturally packaged with a whole symphony of cofactors: magnesium, phosphorus, trace amounts of vitamin K that all work together, telling the body exactly how to use that calcium safely and effectively. It's a gentle, intelligent process that the body has understood for millennia. A high-dose supplement is the opposite of this. It's a brute force intervention. It's like trying to water a delicate plant with a fire hose. It overwhelms the system with a massive, unnatural quantity of a single, isolated mineral, stripped of all its natural partners. This sudden flood is what overwhelms the body's regulatory systems, leaving it with no choice but to dump the excess into our arteries and soft tissues. So please do not leave here today with a fear of calcium-rich foods. They are your allies in this journey. The focus of our concern must be on the artificial, concentrated dose delivered in a pill. That is the source of the risk. But the risk isn't just the slow, silent hardening of our arteries over decades. When we bypass the body's natural wisdom with this pill, we create the conditions for a much more immediate, tragic, and deeply ironic danger, one that can directly cause the very catastrophe the supplement was meant to prevent. And now we come to that dark, tragic irony I mentioned at the very beginning of our journey. The one that reveals the deepest flaw in this entire medical strategy. We've established how unguided calcium paves the arteries, making them stiff and brittle. But a heart attack is not the only risk that comes from compromised blood vessels. This arterial stiffness can disrupt the delicate systems that control our balance and consciousness. It can interfere with the heart's electrical rhythm, causing a sudden arrhythmia, that flutter Margaret felt in her chest. It can contribute to moments of high or low blood pressure that cause a dizzy spell or a bout of vertigo. Or, most frighteningly, it can lead to a mini-stroke, a brief interruption of blood flow to the brain that causes a moment of confusion or weakness. Now, I want you to ask yourself a critical question. What is the single most predictable, most immediate consequence of a sudden, unexpected dizzy spell in an adult over 70? What happens when the world momentarily tilts on its axis without warning? The answer, as we all know, is a fall, a sudden, violent encounter with the ground. This is the devastating feedback loop. The very supplement taken with religious devotion for years, even decades, to prevent a hip fracture, can end up creating the precise cardiovascular event that causes the catastrophic fall that leads to the hip fracture. It is a tragic, self-fulfilling prophecy hidden in plain sight, a cycle of harm created by our relentless focus on a single number on a bone scan while ignoring the whole living person. This devastating irony exposes the profound flaw in a pill for every ill approach. It forces us to step back and ask a much better question. If this is the risk we run by trying to artificially manage one part of the system, what if the most powerful strategy for protecting ourselves doesn't involve this risk at all? What if the real solution isn't found in the pharmacy, but in the way we eat, move, and live our lives? The answer is both empowering and deeply reassuring. The most effective strategy for building and maintaining strong bones throughout our lives does not carry these terrifying risks. The answer isn't a better pill, it is a fundamentally better approach, one that works with your body's innate wisdom, not against it. First, we can actively seek out the warehouse manager, vitamin K2, in our diet. While the richest source is a fermented soybean dish called natto, which can be an acquired taste, K2 is also abundant in foods like goose liver pate, hard and soft cheeses, particularly Gouda, Brie, and Edam, and egg yolks from pasture-raised chickens. We can also ensure we have enough of another critical cofactor, magnesium, found in nuts, seeds, and leafy greens. Many older adults are deficient in magnesium, and without it, calcium simply cannot be properly metabolized. But even more important than any specific nutrient is a different kind of signal we can send to our bodies. The single most powerful, effective, and evidence-based strategy for building strong bones, bar none, is weight-bearing and muscle-strengthening exercise. This is not an opinion, it's a biological fact. The National Osteoporosis Foundation and countless studies confirm that when you put your bones under load, whether through lifting weights, brisk walking, climbing stairs, or even dancing, you send them an undeniable demand for strength. It's a direct biological command that says we need to be stronger to handle this. This signal activates the very cells responsible for building new bone tissue, a process no pill can ever replicate. Think about it. A brisk walk costs nothing, has no dangerous side effects, and simultaneously strengthens your bones, improves your cardiovascular health, and enhances your balance to prevent falls. It is the perfect holistic solution. It addresses the entire system, not just an isolated number on a scan. This approach, combining nutrient-dense foods with regular functional movement, is how we escape the calcium paradox for good. And this brings us to the final and perhaps most quietly consequential piece of this entire puzzle. The one almost nobody is talking about because it shifts the focus from the patient to the system itself. If the evidence against high-dose calcium supplements has been this clear for over a decade and a superior, safer approach is so readily available, why is that chalky pill still the default advice in clinics all over the world? The answer has very little to do with biology and everything to do with a powerful, invisible force called medical inertia. It's the tendency for a system to continue on its current path, even when faced with overwhelming evidence that the path is flawed. It's a system structured to prefer simple, one-size-fits-all instructions. Take this pill, over the more complex, time-consuming, and personalized advice of, let's optimize your diet and exercise. It's easier to write a prescription than to teach a lifestyle. But it's more than just inertia. There is a deeper, more troubling reason rooted in the very structure of how medicine is practiced today. It's about how risk is perceived, not by the patient, but by the physician and the institution they work for. This creates a perverse set of incentives, a kind of professional catch-22, where the decision that protects the doctor from legal exposure is not always the one that best protects the patient from physical harm. And understanding this paradox is the key to understanding why this advice persists. This is what we call the prescribing paradox, and it's one of the most powerful unspoken forces in modern medicine. Imagine two scenarios. In the first scenario, a doctor sees a patient like Margaret, notes her osteopenia on a bone scan, but decides not to recommend a calcium supplement, citing the cardiovascular risks. A year later, Margaret slips and fractures her hip. In the legal fallout that might follow, the line of questioning is direct and brutal. Doctor, the standard of care is to recommend calcium. You failed to do so, and my client was harmed. The link is direct. The standard of care was violated, and the doctor is seen as negligent. It's a career-threatening situation. Now, imagine the second scenario, which is what happens every day. The doctor follows the standard advice and tells Margaret to take 1,200 milligrams of calcium. For the next 10 years, she does so diligently. Then, at age 82, she suffers a fatal heart attack. Can her family prove that the supplement was the cause? Almost impossible. Her death will be attributed to age, genetics, diet, and a dozen other multifactorial risks. The supplement will barely be a footnote. The doctor is seen as having done everything right. Do you see the catch-22? The system creates a situation where a physician is legally and professionally safer recommending an intervention with known risks than they are recommending a more nuanced, evidence-based approach that goes against decades of ingrained practice. This is the very definition of defensive medicine. The path of least resistance, the choice that generates the least paperwork and the lowest risk of a lawsuit, is to keep recommending the pill. This is the devastating truth. The advice you receive is often shaped as much by the legal protection of the provider as it is by the optimal health of the patient. The system is designed to protect itself. And this systemic flaw creates countless individual stories of harm, stories of people like Margaret and Arnold. I could spend the next hour telling you stories just like Margaret's, or the one about Richard. I see them every single week in my practice. The woman whose persistent dizziness was finally traced back to arterial stiffness after a decade on high-dose calcium. The man who endured multiple painful kidney stone procedures, never once being told his supplement might be the culprit. These stories are a constant, heartbreaking drumbeat in the background of modern medicine. But to simply list more of them would be to miss the point entirely. It would be a disservice to the true scale of what we are discussing. This is bigger than any one story, no matter how tragic. This is about a systemic failure, a failure of curiosity, a failure to update our thinking in the face of a mountain of evidence that has been growing for more than a decade. Most of all, it's a failure to consistently apply that longevity lens. The system is still stuck asking the old, narrow question, does this pill raise bone density? And when the number on the scan goes up, it chalks it up as a victory, ignoring the collateral damage. The question we should have been asking all along is so much more important, so much more human. Does this intervention help this person live a longer, better, more independent life? When you ask that question, the right question, the entire house of cards collapses. This systemic inertia can feel impossibly large, and it can leave you feeling powerless. But I believe the most powerful force for change in healthcare doesn't come from a new guideline handed down from on high. It comes from an educated, empowered patient sitting in the exam room. It comes from the ground up. And that is where we pivot. We move from understanding the problem to actively solving it. I promised you at the beginning of this video that I wouldn't just leave you with the evidence of a broken system, but that I would arm you with a clear plan. This is where we deliver on that promise. I'm going to give you a practical framework, a tool that you can take with you into your very next doctor's appointment. This isn't about creating a confrontation. This is about starting a collaboration. It's about giving you the exact words to use to shift the entire dynamic from one of passive acceptance to one of active partnership in your own health. To make this simple and actionable, I have distilled all of this complex science and systemic analysis into 5 specific, powerful questions. These are more than just questions. They are carefully crafted conversation starters designed to respectfully open the door to a more personalized, evidence-based discussion. I want you to physically write these down. Put them in the Notes app on your phone or on a piece of paper you can slide into your purse or wallet. Having them with you in your own handwriting is an act of preparation that builds confidence. These questions signal to your physician that you are an engaged partner who is thinking through the longevity lens. They are designed to move the goalposts from just raising a bone density score to the much more important goal of reducing my overall fracture risk while enhancing my quality of life. They are your script for change. So grab a pen or open a new note on your phone. Let's walk through them one by one. Here are the 5 empowering questions to reclaim control of your bone health strategy. Question number 1. This is the conversation starter, the one that frames the entire discussion through the longevity lens. Given the studies from the last decade linking calcium supplements to cardiovascular risk, can we review if the benefits truly outweigh the risks for me personally? This question does 3 powerful things at once. First, it immediately signals that you are informed. You're not just questioning advice, you are referencing a specific body of scientific evidence, which elevates the conversation from one of opinion to one of data. Second, it uses the word review, which is collaborative, not confrontational. You're inviting your doctor to be a partner in a reevaluation, not telling them they are wrong. And third, the final phrase, for me personally, is the most important part. It moves the discussion away from generic, one-size-fits-all guidelines and insists on a personalized risk assessment. For someone like Margaret, who's already experiencing symptoms like breathlessness, this question becomes critically important. It forces a pause in the medical inertia and puts your unique health profile at the absolute center of the decision-making process, right where it belongs. Question number 2. This question demonstrates that you understand the biology we've discussed today and that you're thinking about your body as an interconnected system. The question is, what are your thoughts on the role of vitamin K2 and magnesium in directing calcium to my bones instead of my arteries?
This is the question that introduces the warehouse manager into the conversation.
You're respectfully pointing out the missing chapter in the conventional medical playbook. This question is not an accusation, it's a test of curiosity and up-to-date knowledge. It checks if your physician's thinking has evolved beyond the simplistic two-part model of just calcium and vitamin D. Mentioning both K2 and magnesium shows a deeper level of understanding. It signals that you know it takes a team of nutrients to build strong bones, not just a single isolated mineral. For someone like Arnold, who may be experiencing the painful consequences of misplaced calcium, like kidney stones or joint deposits, this question gets to the very root of the problem. It shifts the focus from just dumping more bricks onto the job site to hiring the skilled bricklayers needed to build the wall correctly. Question number 3. This question is about demedicalizing your health strategy and reclaiming the power of nutrition. It's simple and direct. Could we develop a strategy for me to meet my calcium needs through diet alone? This question reframes the entire approach from one of supplementation to one of nutrition. It signals a preference for working with your body's natural design, not against it. It communicates that you understand the profound difference between the gentle, intelligent delivery of calcium from food and the brute force shock of a high-dose supplement. This is a powerful statement. It tells your doctor that your goal is not just to check a box by taking a pill, but to build a foundation of health through sustainable, lifelong habits. It opens the door to a richer conversation about food sources, meal planning, and a holistic approach to wellness that goes far beyond the prescription pad. It is, in essence, a request to replace the fire hose with the watering can, giving your body the resources it needs in the way it was always meant to receive them. Question number 4. This question shifts the focus from a passive intervention to an active, empowering solution. Beyond supplements, what are the most effective weight-bearing exercises I can safely do to improve my bone strength? This question fundamentally changes your role from patient to active participant. It shows that you're not looking for an easy fix in a bottle, but that you're willing to do the work to build genuine, resilient health. This is a conversation that every doctor should be excited to have. It moves the focus to the single most powerful evidence-based strategy for strengthening bones. The key word here is safely. It shows that you are being responsible and are looking for guidance that is appropriate for your current fitness level and health status. For both Margaret and Arnold, this question is the key to a better future. It's about building a body that is not just free from fracture, but is also strong, stable, and capable of carrying them through a long and vibrant life. It's about building real strength from the inside out. And finally, question number 5. This is the one that brings it all together, the ultimate application of the longevity lens. It zooms out from a single data point to the goal that truly matters. The question is, instead of just aiming for a higher bone density score, can we focus on a holistic plan to reduce my overall fracture risk, which includes improving my balance and preventing falls? This question is a masterclass in reframing the goal. It gently points out the flaw in focusing on a surrogate marker, the bone density score, and redirects the conversation to the true clinical endpoint, not having a fracture. It shows that you understand that a fall is what breaks the bone, and that bone density is only one part of that equation. A person with perfect bone density who is dizzy and unstable is at far greater risk than someone with mild osteopenia who has excellent strength and balance. This question expands the definition of bone health to include the health of the neurological and muscular systems. It's the most important question of all because it aligns your medical care with your real-life goal to live an independent, active life free from the fear of a catastrophic fall. These 5 questions are your framework. They are designed to be collaborative, not confrontational. And the way your physician responds to them, with curiosity and engagement, or with dismissal and defensiveness, will tell you everything you need to know about whether you have a true partner in your long-term health. Now, let's be very clear about what to expect when you bring these questions to your appointment. A thoughtful, evidence-based physician will welcome this conversation. They will see it not as a challenge to their authority, but as a sign that you are a deeply engaged and proactive partner in your own health. They may not agree with every point, but they will be willing to discuss the evidence, review your personal risk factors, and collaborate on a plan that feels right for you. That is the hallmark of excellent, patient-centered care. It is a green light. However, you must also be prepared for a different reaction. If your doctor dismisses these questions out of hand, if they refuse to discuss the evidence, or if they fall back on the simple answer that this is just the way we've always done it, then that response is also a piece of information. It is, in fact, incredibly valuable information. It might be a red flag that their knowledge has not kept pace with the last decade of science. It might indicate a physician who's more comfortable with medical inertia than with personalized care. A defensive response is not a reflection on you, it's a reflection of a rigid approach that may no longer be serving your best interests. Because ultimately, this conversation is a litmus test. It reveals whether your healthcare is being guided by dogma or by data. And making that distinction is critical, because this whole issue, from Margaret's fluttering heart to Arnold's painful kidney stones, is about so much more than a single supplement. It's a perfect case study for a much larger, more philosophical question we all must face. What is the true goal of medicine as we age? This isn't an argument to be anti-supplement or anti-doctor. It's an argument to be pro-evidence, to be pro-logic. But most of all, it's an argument to be pro-you. It reveals a fundamental choice we all face in our relationship with modern healthcare. We have to decide which kind of medicine we truly want for ourselves. There's a medicine that is exceptionally good at finding things, at identifying a number on a chart that falls outside a predetermined range, like a bone density score, and then prescribing a pill to change that number. This is a medicine of isolated data points, of risk management on a spreadsheet, of fragmented problems solved with fragmented interventions. And then there is medicine that helps you live well. This medicine asks a fundamentally different set of questions. It asks, what do you want to be able to do in your life, and how can we build a comprehensive strategy to ensure you can do it? It is a medicine of human values, of interconnected systems, and of a deep commitment to the quality of your experience. For too long, the system's obsession with the first has come at the direct expense of the second. The shift we are advocating for today is the one that moves you from being a passive patient, a recipient of instructions, to an empowered advocate for your own life. It is the profound realization that you are the CEO of your health, and your doctor is your most trusted, most expert consultant. It is you who determines the objective. You bring your life goals to the table, and together you use the best available evidence to map a strategy that serves those goals, not just the numbers on a lab report. And what is the ultimate goal? Let's be brutally honest with ourselves. The goal is not to have the best bone density score in the nursing home. The goal is to not be in the nursing home. The goal is to have the strength to lift your own groceries out of the car at 80. It's to have the cardiovascular health to walk up a hill with your family and enjoy the view without that familiar, frightening breathlessness. It is to have the balance and confidence to play with your grandchildren on the floor and know with absolute certainty that you can get back up again with ease. This is the very essence of the longevity lens. It's not just about adding years to your life, but about adding life to your years. It is about pursuing a longevity defined not by the absence of disease, but by the presence of vitality, independence, and the profound, simple joy of a body that serves you well. This is the conversation that can fundamentally change the trajectory of our later years. It's a conversation built on curiosity, grounded in science, and centered entirely on you. If this is the kind of evidence-based, patient-first conversation you've been searching for, one that respects your intelligence and honors your life goals, then I warmly invite you to subscribe and join our community here at Keystone Health. Every single week, we take on another piece of conventional medical wisdom, hold it up to the light of the most current science, and rebuild a strategy that puts your quality of life at the absolute center. Our mission is to continue providing these frameworks, these questions, and this clarity so that you never have to feel like a passive recipient of care again. It's about building a community of empowered health advocates who are committed to living better, not just longer. By subscribing, you ensure you won't miss the next piece of the puzzle.
You join a movement of people who are choosing to question the autopilot advice of the past and build a more intentional, vital future. This journey of empowerment, however, doesn't end when this video stops. In fact, the most important part begins now, with the conversations you're about to start, both with your doctor and, just as importantly, with each other. The power of this community isn't just in watching, it's in sharing. The wisdom isn't just in the evidence I've presented, but in the collective experience of everyone here navigating this complex system together. Your story, your question, is a vital piece of that puzzle. So I want to end with an invitation. After hearing the story of Margaret and understanding the science behind the calcium paradox, what is the one question that is now burning brightest for you? It might be one of the 5 we discussed, or it might be something entirely new, something personal that has surfaced for you today. What is the one thing you feel you must discuss at your next doctor's appointment? Share that one question in the comments below. I want you to think of this not just as leaving a comment, but as contributing to a library of courage for everyone who will watch this video after you. Your specific wording, your unique concern might be the key that unlocks this conversation for someone else who feels stuck or intimidated. By reading through the comments, we all learn. We see our own concerns reflected in others, and we find the strength to move forward, knowing we are part of a larger movement of people who are no longer willing to accept the autopilot answers. This is how real change begins. Not with a single voice, but with a chorus of thoughtful questions. It's how we transform medicine from a monologue of instructions into a dialogue of partnership. It's how we ensure that the next chapter of our lives is written not by medical inertia, but by our own informed choices. After seeing the evidence on the calcium paradox, what's the one piece of autopilot medical advice you're now questioning? Answer in the comments below. I read and reply to every single one. This is just one flawed assumption, and in our next video, we uncover the real cause of chronic knee pain. It's not what you think. Subscribe and turn on all notifications so you don't miss the truth. Like this video and share it with someone who needs to hear this.